Stage 9, the 10th day of the Vuelta España, and there's been no other team to lead this race except US Postal. A nice round 100 miles today, but it's a little bit pebble dashed by those third category and second category climbs, with a very tough climb taking us up to the finish at Atana. And that is where this race will certainly be decided. The strongest man on this all category, outside category finishing climb. This is now when the Vuelta España begins to get a little bit tough, I think.
It certainly does. It's the first real big rendezvous, and let's just have a look at that. It starts the day off with a couple of third category climbs, then 3 second category climbs, followed by a third down towards the end at Benifalim, but it's all really going to be on that final climb of the day. 39 kilometers to go now on the 5th climb of the day there at Torremanzanas.
Well, this will be a nice test now to see, and I have to say the climbers did their best in the time trial to keep themselves nice and tightly packed. This is the remnants of the breakaway here as we go on to this climb here, the Torremanzanas. Second category, just sat there at the back, is Pablo Lastras.
He had a good Vuelta a España a couple of years ago when he got himself 2 stage victories, but right now he's hoping that this breakaway is going to survive. But you know, they don't really have that much of an advantage over the front end of the main field, and this is the group that they were with just a few moments ago.
Well, I can tell you what, yesterday's winner, Tyler Hamilton, does seem to be in more than a spot of bother. He's some many minutes behind at the moment. There was a breakaway, got away pretty early on, and they've been pretty much dominating the race here at the front. And this is the first battle, I suppose, for the points that will really count in the King of the Mountains. That's the situation just now. Leader at 2:58, peloton going back to over 5 minutes, and Tyler Hamilton has been dropped apparently and is trailing by about 8 minutes.
Well, this is the 4th man on the road. This is David Blanco. He's 2 minutes 58 seconds behind the 3 leaders, and in fact it seems to me as if he's actually got a couple of riders in front of him.
Yes, there are a small breakaway of 3. There's the peloton, timing through there at 3 minutes 23, so they're beginning to close up a little bit now. Still Floyd Landis has got his golden jersey back. This will be a big test for him today, though, because the climbers are licking their lips. This is Lestras just here.
So that's Cárdenas just in
Félix
front of him.
Cárdenas, he's been there all day.
And he's looking for some points in the King of the Mountains classification, because he is the defending champion in that competition, a title which he took last year. So only 2 leaders now, Cárdenas and Lastras, 3 minutes and 23 seconds ahead of the main field. So all of the men in the middle now have been picked up by the peloton. The race situation is just 2 leaders, but I tell you what, this is not really a peloton anymore, is it, Phil? Because there's a lot of pressure on the front end of the main field, and this is Alexander Vinokourov. He too is not having a very nice day.
No, he's not. Well, the good news is the rice pudding apparently has been declared safe, but it didn't stop all the riders retiring from the T-Mobile, and that mystery remains. But it looks as though today Vinokourov is also having his fill. There's been a lot of dropouts today, I can tell you now. AG2 are also claiming problems with the food. Have lost 4 riders today, so that team is vastly thinned out. And Thomas Konechny is also gone from T-Mobile. It's a bit of a wonder now whether those 2 teams are going to finish any riders just now. And Maxi van Heeswijk has also retired.
Well, I'm sure they'll finish Erik Zabel, because he's ever consistent, and it doesn't really seem to matter what happens to the rest of the team. Even when they crumble, Erik Zabel is always very consistent and always a man that they can count upon. You can see today, I think Liberty Seguros, Phil, are trying to really toughen up this race. I think they want to set something up for Roberto Heras. And this is Lastras, who was in the break just a few moments ago, just getting picked up by the front end of the main field. But Roberto Heras' Liberty Seguros are really stamping out a serious amount of authority on this race. I think they want to see if they can crack Floyd Landis. It's going to be a tough cookie to crack, though.
Well, we'll try and hopefully get a camera in there, shortly, and get a good look at his face. But he's in that group just now. But Félix Cárdenas, as we look here now at the Rabobank rider, Oscar Freire, looks to be in a little bit of trouble himself, the sprinter. These are the roads he doesn't particularly like. He's a very up and down rider, Oscar. He wins one day, he packs in the next. You never quite know his consistency.
He's always very consistent, though, when it comes to World Championships. He's won himself 2 titles over the last couple of years. These are the 2 leaders now. 8 kilometers to go to the finish. Cárdenas on the front, a serious chance of getting himself the win here this afternoon, because they're still holding on to a fair amount of their advantage.
Well, Cárdenas lucky to be in this race. He really wasn't sure he should have come to the start. He had an accident in training before the race. He broke I think it was his elbow. He's got a couple of screws in there, but they're remarkable, these riders. He has come to the start, and today, as the defending King of the Mountains, he's chosen to go out on the hunt for points. He's certainly pilled up quite a few of them, and it should be enough to give him the overall lead at least. 2 minutes 50 on the peloton, and that may not be enough.
Two leaders are still holding on to only just inside of 3 minutes, and the main field, despite the pressure, this is further down the field, and this is Tyler Hamilton, and as you can see, Phil, this is in fact Oscar Sevilla. He too is being tailed off, and that is a bit of a surprise. Team Phonak are not having a great day here.
No, they are not. And Oscar there looks a little bit troubled. He still looks as baby face as he ever has, even in his great days when he almost won this race. He beaten by Angel Casero, 2001, I think it was.
Well, this group now is certainly being reduced in numbers. I make it only around about 22 riders. There's Leonardo Pippoli just sitting on the back here for Sonia Duval. But Liberty Seguros are really trying to break the stranglehold of US Postal Service, and there in third place is Floyd Landis, looking very comfortable in his golden jersey right at the front end of the main field. And as you can see, this pressure that's being put on the front end of this race by Liberty Seguros is really starting to damn a lot of riders to the second ranks.
That's a very select little bunch. Now, Cárdenas needs to finish in amongst the points at the top of the finishing line today. If he does, then he will be the leader of the King of the Mountains. Currently, he's picked up a lot of points and he's up in the top 3, but he needs those points at the finish if he wants the leader's jersey. A lot of teamwork being done here. And this is becoming a battle of the riders who've got good climbers on their squad. Just looking down here, this is Jimenez. He also, not too sure where he is on the road at the moment, to be quite honest. Eladio Jimenez, he was with the breakaway, so he must be on his way back. 2:26 the gap, 8 kilometers to go for what we'll call the peloton right now. Looking for the golden jersey down there.
Well, I did see it just a few moments ago.
They're
about fourth position, in fact, and as we come to, there's about a kilometre separating these riders on the road, but as you're going uphill, that doesn't correspond to a minute, that corresponds to about 2.5 minutes. Cárdenas still looking very good there. You can see the weather has changed just a little bit. The clouds are starting to come in, but it is fortunately dry for these riders. Pablo Lastras, a very aggressive bike rider there in first position, wearing number 87.
He's got no victories this year, but he rode well last year. He came to, of course, our notice when he picked up that stage win in the Tour de France at Saint-Maximin. And after he won there, he went on to win the overall classification in the Tour de Burgos, not too far away from where we are. And that's about all he's got to his credit, but they're good wins, there's no doubt about that. He's also had a couple of stage wins in the Vuelta in 2002, and he might be queuing himself up for a good win today. 2:20 the gap, but the only thing against him is they've been away an awful long time. Cárdenas has been hunting the King of the Mountains points. He's bagged quite a few. He isn't the leader yet, but he is, let's not forget, the defending champion in the mountains. But that gap is not insurmountable behind them as we start the climb up to the line.
Well, Cárdenas got himself a very good win in the Vuelta a España last year. It was at the top of the Sierra Nevada, which is a great place to win if you are a climber. And I think he's starting now, Phil, just to put a little bit of pressure onto Pablo Lastras. Cárdenas is much the better climber of the two riders in the leading group, and they are still holding on to a fair amount of their advantage. If they can keep the pressure going like this, they may well just hold on to survive. But I think Liberty Seguros have got something else in mind, because they are trying to set this race up for Roberto Heras.
And the crowd here are enjoying the spectacle, even if it is a little bit chilly up on the slopes. Nice climb this, though. Lick your lips if you're a really good climber, but I think these two boys are tired. They're just hoping now. They're around about just over 6 kilometers from the finish here, and it's all uphill. You can see the road swinging around across the face of the riders. They will see it too. This is the group looking as though it's getting a little bit smaller. But it just shows, you know, Floyd Landis is there at the minute. That'll be 7 kilometers to go under that banner.
And it looks like it's hats-off time as well. Somebody donned the helmet to the side of the road there. Inside of 7 kilometers now, and still the front end of this group is being dominated by Liberty Seguros. Roberto Heras is very comfortably in this group. I also noticed Luis Perez moving to the front there for Cofidis. We'll get a chance to see who is in the back end of this group. There is one of the riders from Liberty Seguros at the back. That's Marcos Serrano. Kilometres slowly but surely ticking by, and these riders will be just hoping that there's no big battle in the group behind, but I think there is going to be a serious sorting out, because Roberto Heras probably thinks he's got a very good chance of getting the lead away from Floyd Landis. Heras did a superb ride in the individual time of Cárdenas.
Cárdenas, he for some reason decided this isn't quick enough. He doesn't want to go to the top with a team with a rival. He's trying to attack him, and this is a big effort by Félix Cárdenas, a rider who has not won a race this year, but he got second in the Tour of the Asturias, which is also a climbers race. Last year's King of the Mountains, and a stage when he finished 8th in the Vuelta last year, but he came in this year after his injury, not really knowing quite what to expect, but the team wanted him in because his team is a small team and they need a big name on it, and there's no doubt that Felix is the big name they wanted on it. So he started, and now he's had a good day today. Brave man that would attack so far out and race for more than 100 kilometres ahead of the field when you're not sure of your form.
This is Baranovsky on the left-hand side there for Liberty Seguros, wearing number 9. He's done a lot of work on the front end of the race for the team leader, Roberto Heras, and I think now he's paying for that, and he is going to slip away and just going to have to drag his body up to the summit of this climb.
No, those clouds are not looking too good, but let's hope the rain stays away till the riders at least get over the top and finish. But look at the crowd here. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. It would look a lot nicer if the sun was peeping through, I must confess.
There's Floyd Landis. This is Roberto Heras in second position, right on the wheel there of Isidro Nozal. Nozal now is the man who's taking up the pace maker, and look at those gaps starting to appear. This is an unbelievable job being done by Liberty Seguros, and they've actually hacked almost a minute off the time of the two leaders. 1:34 at 6 kilometres to go.
A little bit of a test bed this, I think, for the big climbers. They haven't put in anything to hurt anybody, but they're seeing just who is staying with them in that very select peloton. Heras has staked his claim as the favourite because he's put his team on the front to do all of the work. US Postal, who've made the most of the golden jerseys so far, having led every day, but they've done it with clever riding. They still say they've no real ambition to win this race.
That's amazing. They said that before the start. The only reason they were going to come to the Vuelta a España was to try and win individual stages. Well, they've been all over the newspapers here in Spain by their domination at the top end of the overall classification. Roberto Heras now trying to crack the man who only 12 months ago was his teammate. This is Stefano Garzelli at the back there, wearing 201. He's in the spot of bother too, trying to stay in contact with this unbelievable infernal pace, which is being set on the front there by Isidro Nozal. Aitor Gonzalez, the Terminator, the winner of the Vuelta a España a couple of years ago, he's also been left behind. Mancebo too now is starting to drop off the back there. Now this man was expected to accompany this group in the mountains, and this is Floyd Landis. This is hard. Well,
this is the pressure of the day. The yellow jersey has made a huge effort here, or the golden jersey rather, a huge effort to hold on to a very select group of climbers. He would probably not have made this effort if he hadn't have been the race leader. Big test moment there for Floyd Landis. Meanwhile, back at the front, Cárdenas has been rejoined by Lestras, who's not giving him an inch.
Well, what Floyd Landis has to do right now, Phil, is not to panic at all. He's got a fair amount of time in hand over the climbers, but they now have to try and dam him further back down the overall classification if they can. Look at Roberto Heras. He is completely and utterly concentrated. He is a king of the mountains. He may not be going for that competition, but he certainly is magic when you see him going up hills like this.
Well, this has been terrific efforts here, and of course that group now has been sliced to a handful.
Isn't it funny how the sport really throws up these things? These two men in first and second position were first and second overall in the Vuelta a España last year when we get into the final climb. And Roberto Heras, in fact, took the lead away from Isidro Nozal just 24 hours before the end.
Just 7 men left now in pursuit of 2. Now there's an idea of how high we're going. Rather a dizzy shot, that one, I have to say.
It is, but Floyd Landis is not actually losing all that much time. He's only around about 10 seconds off the pace as we go with the two leaders inside of 5 kilometres to go now.
Yeah, I wonder what Floyd's going to make of that when he sees it. 3 miles still to climb to the summit here. Looks like peepily as these riders continue to go through. These are riders coming back from the early breakaway, actually, as they've more or less wiped them all out now by fine tempo riding by this strong man, Isidro Nozal. He rose from nowhere to be a star last year, 16 days in the leader's jersey, but the all-important final time trial, he gave it away to Roberto Heras. couldn't match him in the mountains. Now here he is doing all of the work, which could pave a yellow jersey for Roberto Heras. And this is Valverde. He's suffering from a fall he had a couple of days ago, and he still looks to be in trouble here. He's not quite as sharp as he was in the opening couple of stages.
Well, he's a brave rider, he's a courageous rider. A lot of discussion as well as where he's going to go and ride next year. This guy is regarded as one of the major talents in the sport for the future. A lot of people think that he might switch across to go and ride for Rabobank, to go and ride alongside Oscar Freire, but you can see now the pressure is starting to crack a lot of riders. Carlos Sastre too isn't able to stay with the pace of Isidro Nozal, who led the Vuelta a España last year for an awful long time and actually slipped down towards the end, just 24 hours from the end of the race, down into 7th place.
And that's Bingen Fernandez also up there. He's gone back as well now. Well, hats off to Isidro. He's playing the role to the full, and he's going to give himself a high overall position right now because they destroyed most of the Vuelta on this climb. Time will make the essence later, but at the moment there's nobody here, and here goes another attack. And this time it is again an attack from Cárdenas. And back on the defensive comes Lastras, and it looks as though he's mastered him once more.
Well, Pablo Lastras is riding an absolutely superb climb here because Félix Cárdenas is a very good climber. The winner of the King of the Mountains classification last year and the winner of the stage to the summit of the Sierra Nevada, and he's not been able to put daylight between himself and Lastras, who must have turned himself inside out there to respond to that attack.
Well, this is an unrelenting climb, and we're pulling back, which is never a good sign. There's the two leaders, and there are the immediate chasers. I think that's one rider losing ground, but these aren't. This is the chase group now, and that's Nozal setting the pace for Heras. It looks as though they are going to catch them and spoil a perfect day for the breakaways. Fernio and Pipoli are the other riders in this group right now. Pipoli always turns in a good surprise occasionally, and looks like today he's on a good day.
Floyd Landis, the leader of the race in the overall classification, the wearer of the golden jersey, and he's actually riding a very sensible race here because he's controlling the race. He can see basically where all of the challenges are in front of him, and I would say for the moment he's only lost himself around about 15 seconds.
Well, a couple of strong attacks there by Félix Cárdenas has done nothing to alter the two leaders' positions. And now I'm not so sure he's got too much more left in those legs. He's still having to do all of the work because Lastras is answering the attacks. Don't think he's got the strength to make one himself. 4 kilometers to go, and there's all sorts of bother here now because this is David Blanco, number 12.
Forgotten about him. He was caught out in the middle of nowhere for an awful long time. He was trying to get across to those two leaders, and he's actually survived an awful long time. Valverde, he too now is beginning to suffer, slipping back as riders start to accelerate up through the main field.
He hasn't got an answer to that one, to be quite honest. This is Menchov there, just behind. He's riding a great tour too. Sastre, this is Menchov. Conditions getting a little bit grimy up at on top here. We're almost on the cloud line.
Cabeza de Carrera, the front end of the bike race. We're with moto number 1, and this is Félix Cárdenas. He looks pretty comfortable, but he's having a very difficult time getting rid of Pablo Lastras. Now the gaps are starting to narrow very dramatically, and in fact there's only about 50 to 100 meters between the two leaders now and the chase group of the heads of state of this bike race. There is Isidro Nozal still pacing Roberto Heras. Surely Roberto Heras very soon, Phil, has got to try and accelerate out of the slipstream of his teammate here if he wants to win himself this stage.
The face there of Nozal reminds me as though he should have a part in a James Bond film. He sits there on the front now, much to do all of the work. Heras is taking him. Heras actually is setting himself up here for a likely stage win right now because there are the two leaders literally around the corner. And these are only 4 riders left. Remember the group we had at the start of the climb?
Well, it's goodbye Blanco.
Oh, yes.
And this is Mancebo. Whiteout, yeah. Mancebo starting to recover here. In fact, he may well ride himself back in. He's a little bit further down the road. He's got Carlos Sastre for company. And there just in front, you can see the group of Roberto Heras. Now, Heras still sitting in the slipstream of Isidro Nozal, who is doing an unbelievable job of work here this afternoon. He's never looked round at all. He's just sat on the front end of this group, and slowly but surely they've eliminated riders from the rear. And it looks as if somebody's actually recovered here and got onto the back of that group.
Well, it's Menchov who's just hanging there.
Not very much longer either, because I think he's decided to give up the ghost.
Well, what have we got to say about Isidro Nozal? He's been absolutely superb. What a strong man he's turning out to be here. His second place in this race last year, 16 days in the golden jersey. That was no fluke. This man hasn't done much outside of the Vuelta España, but this is his race as they continue up the climb. Number 104 there, by the way. That is Jorge Ferrio from Spain.
This is why Mancebo dropped off the back there, Phil. He's actually dropped off the back to wait for his teammate, Francisco Mancebo, to try and pace him back up to this group. He must have got the nod from the team manager that, in fact, his teammate was starting to cover, was starting to ride back up to contact with Roberto Heras and Isidro Nozal, and Mancebo has actually sat up and waited for Mancebo.
Well, that's good teamwork, because it's also been some very good riding there from Mancebo, because it looked as though this group was moving away.
But what an unbelievable job this man is doing on the front, Isidro Nozal. He's got control of the front end of this race. He's eliminated almost the whole of the main field. Now, this is Félix Cárdenas, who's been caught and passed straight off the back.
Straight through, and I think also, though this is Lestra's last desperate effort, and there is Mancebo.
Heras has gone.
Heras has gone, and now it's up to the others to follow, because the commissaire going a little bit demented at the back there, because we're in the way of the attack here. Piepoli is trying to get across to him, pretty easy to recognise.
Well, Piepoli is in pretty good form right now as well, because just a couple of weeks ago he won himself the Subida Urquiola, which is a very nasty race just outside of Barcelona. He's a great mountain top finisher, and over the last couple of years he spent most of his career actually riding in Spain, so he knows most of these climbs, and he's actually made the contact with Roberto Heras. Now, Heras, I think there, Phil, is going to be a little bit surprised.
Yes, but he's not going to worry, I don't think, too much about Piepoli being a threat all the way to the finish in Madrid. But we'll see. This is the rider who was overweight in 1998 because he had 20 screws in his body after quite a serious crash. But that's all behind him now, and he's back to his very fit self again. It looks as like we're going to finish this in the mist as well at the top of the mountain here. But Leonardo Piepoli, it's unusual for an Italian to settle down quite so well in Spain. They like their own country to live, but this man here is riding exceptionally well on Spanish roads. Just looking down the list here, this is Nozal now, still finding the strength to hold on. He won't pace make anymore now. Ferrio is going to have to do all of the work, and there's a pure climber for you. Flicks his left elbow saying, come on, give me a hand. Well, Nozal says, I can't really pace now. My team captain's up the road.
Well, after all the work that he's done, I'm not sure that he's got the very much left to do any more pacemaking. But, you know, he's a very courageous bike rider. He's come up to the front here and he's decided just to keep going, because let's not forget, Nozal himself is 7th in the overall classification at the start of the day. Piepoli is a long way down, more than 15 minutes down on Floyd Landis, who for the moment we don't have any news on at all. But I don't think Floyd Landis is losing all that much time.
Just look at the face here of Valverde. Trying now on what is a bad day for him not to concede too much time, because there's every chance you can reverse it with the roads that lie ahead, the mountains, and 2 more time trials. Far too early to concede the Tour yet. So grit your teeth and try and just save seconds. But at the moment, Heras is making the most of this. And there's the... Where's he find his legs from?
This is unbelievable. Isidro Nozal was asked to come to the front by Ferrio there, and he said, OK, I will, but I'm not going to pace you all the way up this mountain. I think I'll go and see if I can help Roberto Heras just a little bit more.
That is amazing, because he looked as though he was absolutely on his limit when Ferrero called him to the front. And now he's got a real chance of pedalling back up here by the look of it. Well, Piepoli knows the mission of Roberto, so he's not going to help him. But I bet he comes round him in the sprint if these two stay clear to the line.
Well, Heras is more important today to try and get himself time over everybody else in this race. He started the day in 14th place overall, 2:26 behind. He lost most of that time in the individual time trial, but today he's trying to turn the clocks around and climb himself up the classification. Look at the face here on Piepoli. All he's doing is just looking at the back wheel of Roberto Heras and hoping he can stay in contact, because if he can, he does, I think, have a very good chance of getting past Heras in the sprint.
Well, he's 33, Piepoli, 3 days after this race finishes. But right now, he's riding like a teenager. He's pretty strong today. Had 4 wins last year, and he's had only that 1 win Paul told us about this year in Urquiola, or Urquiola. Now, this is further down. This is still Mancebo. Might keep his lead in the King of the Mountains, because he's going to score on this climb, which will stop Cárdenas, I think, from taking over the race lead in that department.
Well, Roberto Heras opening up the gaps on everybody else in the bike race here this afternoon as he comes up to the Flamme Rouge, the red kites. Just 1,000 meters left to go, but that's going to take them just a little bit more than 2 minutes on the slopes of a mountain like this.
Now, Piepoli has done nothing to help Heras in his mission to gain time in the Vuelta España. He's going to be poised for the big finish here. There'll be no presents given to the Spanish rider, I'm sure, by the Italian. Look at that, straight under the kilometre and only 12 seconds behind. Nozal racing into third, but Mancebo, off our cameras, probably done the ride of the climb.
He's done an unbelievable job. He's never panicked. He's picked his way through the field. He's caught riders one at a time and started to dispatch them, and he's pulling himself that little bit further up towards Roberto Heras. In fact, he is only around about 20 seconds behind Roberto Heras there at that 1 kilometre to go banner. And Isidro Nozal, Phil, is only 10 seconds in arrears. And in fact, Floyd Landis is not too far behind. He's hovering at around about the 40-second mark, so he could just hold on to his overall lead this afternoon.
Fight as long as he possibly can. This is stage 9 of the Vuelta, day 10. Only US Postal have led so far, but this is the most important day for the climbers and the men who want to win in Madrid. And right now, the defending champions made sure his name's on top of the list of the men who want to. Here he comes up towards the finish, and this is Nozal, who suddenly found his second wind. Meanwhile, a little bit lower down, Valverde continues to fight. You've got to admire that man of courage, but now I think it's more the question of when will the Italian make his move.
I think it will come when he sees the banner across the road. Roberto Heras has never looked round at all because obviously, Phil, in the back of his mind here this afternoon, I don't think he's too worried about the stage victory. What he wants to do is get as much time as possible on the rendezvous which suit him, and that is the uphill mountain finishes. This is where he could lay the foundations of possibly a second win in a row here at the Vuelta a España, but he's got an awful lot of work to do. But he did the same thing last year. He never gave up right up until 24 hours to go before the finish. He still kept the hope in his heart that he could win this bike race.
This is Valverde, also looking as though at last acts of desperation here to save seconds, because he knows exactly what Paul has just said. His time is of the essence on this mountain today. What you lose here to men like Heras may not be able to be recouped, but there is the attack for victory, and Roberto has no answer because he's made so much effort to gain time over the rest. He'll just chase Leonardo and try and salvage every second out of this stage. I don't think it'll give him the golden jersey today because he's a little bit too far behind, but we'll see where Landis finishes. No doubt about the winner. It's going to be Leonardo Piepoli as he goes clear now for a very good result for him. And he's certainly opened up the gap, so he was saving something just for that sprint finish.
He certainly was. Looks over his shoulder. He's got a very big gap over Roberto Heras there. He's not too worried about the overall classification. I think he was dreaming of a mountaintop finish here. He's in great form this season. He's had a lot of top places in the overall classification in some of the smaller stage races here in Spain, but this is going to be his best win of the season.
There's no doubt about that. And a good result too for Sonia Duval, as Leonardo Piepoli gets only his second win of the season. And right behind him is the man the Spanish crowd want to see. Roberto Heras comes over just 4 seconds in arrears, but more importantly ahead of his major rivals. Here comes the big man. He is big too to get over a mountain like this, and he double take then when he looked over and he saw Mancebo coming on him like a train.
Only 15 seconds, and that man was around about 30 seconds down at 2 kilometers to go, so he really has recovered quite remarkably. This is Ferrio coming across the line.
Good ride by him.
And Valverde too has recovered over the last few kilometers.
We're talking just a few seconds here, maybe 30 to Valverde, so he didn't lose the Tour of Spain today, that is for sure. This looks like Denny Menchov coming in. Again, the riders who were forced to ride well in the time trial are now showing they can ride well here.
This is Carlos Sastre coming through for CSC. He too has recovered quite a bit. We're still waiting to see Floyd Landis come up. And that's Floyd Landis. There he is, inside of a minute, so he lost a little bit of time over the last couple of kilometers. And I think he should stay up there in the Golden Fleece.
I agree. Well, there's the stage result as we saw it come over the line. The time gaps, of course, are most important, but they are only seconds here at the top of the Alto di Atena. Leonardo Piepoli, who really isn't going to affect the outcome of this race in a week and a half's time. He gets the stage win. different style of trophy today. And overall, Floyd Landis has survived a serious mountain stage to keep his lead from Beltran by 33 seconds. Mancebo still third. Nozal is fourth. Alejandro Valverde is up into fifth, and just off the list there is Roberto Heras.
Well, that's a great ride there by Floyd Landis, and he really must have done an excellent job over the last few kilometres. He was slowly but surely losing time to Roberto Heras all the time, but he did enough to stay in the golden jersey.
Not quite the mountains as we move on now to stage number 10. There they all are for you. 3 third categories, a second, but again, just before the end, a brilliant place for a springboard broad attack is this first category climb. We go from Alcoy now to Zoret to Cati, 174.5 kilometres. And this is where the riders now will continue to attack. We are going to stay in the mountains now and the undulations, with very little visits down to the flat roads. This is a tough tour from now on. And that is the race situation as we join the action here. Now there is a breakaway on. The gap is 7 minutes and, as we speak, 7 minutes and 28 seconds.
It's a massive gap. It's brought to us by the GPS. Spain actually has a GPS on all of the motorbikes that go out onto the course, and it gives us a rough guide. It's never an exact time check from the main field to the breakaways, but it gives us an idea of whether the break is going up or whether the time gap is starting to come down.
Well, the amazing thing is the battle here, which is still being raged by the boys for the points jersey as well. And this breakaway here contains sprinters, and that's the most important thing, I think, as the riders have opened up a fairly big gap here. 14 minutes it's been, and now coming down a little bit. There's an interesting graphic for you. 17.4 kilometres to the finish for the peloton, 10.9 kilometres to the finish for the breakaway. That should say it might well stay away today.
Well, it should stay away, because that's around about a 5 kilometre difference between the two, and that at the moment corresponds to just outside of 7.5 minutes.
And what's strange about this, Paul, is on a semi-mountainous stage, the sprinters have got into the move. Stuart O'Grady, Oscar Freire, Erik Zabel, all following each other around because of this battle for the points lead, are all in this breakaway on a day they shouldn't be seen.
Well, it's putting an awful lot of pressure onto Liberty Seguros, who are on the front end of the main field, trying to keep themselves in contention. But certainly the sprinters had a very difficult day yesterday, and they've all gone out on the attack. In fact, the battle for supremacy in the points classification really is quite remarkable. That is hotting up to be a very interesting race.
Well, still 163 men in the Tour. The only 3 dropouts we've heard of today: Nicolas Jalabert of Phonak, Laszlo Bedrogi of Quickstep, and Fabien Yecker from Sonia Duval. All given up today on the road, so there'll be 163 as we speak, heading towards the finish.
Long line at the front end of the main field. Liberty Seguros, they are now, Phil, starting to act as leaders of this bike race. They really do believe, I think, that Roberto Heras has got a chance of doing something very special on the climb up towards the finish.
Well, they won't get caught. 7 minutes 35 at 15 kilometres from the line. All of the race leaders are in the big pack. Nobody is affecting the destiny of the golden jersey up front. There's some interesting names up there, though. Names like Stuart O'Grady. I've mentioned Eladio Jimenez from Kelme. And the breakaway is thinned down a little bit, but it's still basically all up there.
It's the front end of the main field, a big long line, once again dominated by the crosswinds in this part of Spain. And we've seen, the rain is actually now starting to come down, and that really is remarkable. The weather conditions have changed in the space of around about 20 seconds. This is the leading group.
Well, it's sweeping in across the road here. Not a pleasant situation now. Zabel and Oscar Freire and Stuart O'Grady have been dicing out the intermediate sprints. Oscar Freire got the first one, Zabel was third. Zabel got the second one, O'Grady was second, and Oscar Freire was third. And in the third one, Zabel won that ahead of O'Grady. So at the moment, it's advantage Zabel for the points.
Well, Erik Zabel, he's an unbelievable player. I've got a lot of time for Erik Zabel. He reminds me an awful lot of a man by the name of Sean Kelly, who was a great sprinter in the 70s and 80s. Kelly was present from the start of the season in February right the way through to the very end of the year, which is exactly the same as Erik Zabel. And Zabel this year has been second so many times every month of the season, from February right through till now.
That's right. And everybody likes Erik Zabel. If ever you talk to anybody about this great German, they all say, what a great guy, what a consistent bike rider. Races for the love of the sport, and we all agree with that. 8 kilometres left to ride now. This is the remnants of the breakaway. There are, looking at them, look about 7 of them left at the moment. And we're looking probably here at Ruslan Ivanov, Juan Fuentes, who speaks fluent English, but he is a Spaniard riding on an Italian team, Seiko. Jose Miguel Elias from Relax, Erik Zabel are in there. Also Oscar Freire, Eladio Jimenez and Stuart O'Grady. That's the makeup for you, and having told you all, there it is for you to see.
Well, these weather conditions really are pretty nasty. I have to say that I would expect to see an attack coming from either Fuentes or Jimenez on the run in towards the finish, because this is a very difficult run into the finish line. It's not exactly a mountaintop finish, but it's not far off.
Probably just as well with all these sprinters in the breakaway. This is a most unusual breakaway. You would not expect to see 3 top sprinters in a group like this that contains a first category mountain. There's the details for you. There's Zorre de Cati, 10.6 average gradient. It's 4.3 kilometres, just over 2.5 miles long, this climb. And then that little clip down to the finish. But if you can get away on the top, you might hold them off downstairs.
Well, the main field is still under a lot of pressure, and the pressure is being put on at the front end of the main field by Roberto Heras' Liberty Seguros team. They really now are starting to slip it into gear, and they do need to come up with a good ride in the Vuelta a España, because they had a disastrous Tour de France this year. They put all their eggs into the one basket of Roberto Heras. They thought Heras was really going to rattle the cage of Lance Armstrong in the big mountain passes. Well, in fact, before he got to the mountains, he was already around about 40 minutes in arrears.
The gap here is coming down, but I think this rain has completely dampened enthusiasm for the chase. They know that the breakaway is not affecting the overall destiny of the golden jersey, so they're going to live to fight another day, I think, and just get it over with. Well, I didn't quite catch that banner as to exactly how much to go, but it's probably 7 kilometres left to go.
I think that was 1 kilometre to the summit of the climb. This is the leading group. There is O'Grady, 3 from the back. O'Grady is an unbelievable bike rider. You know, he's never scared to go out on the attack, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was his presence in that leading breakaway at the start of the day that forced the other 2 sprinters, Oscar Freire and Erik Zabel, to take up the chase.
Well, Stuart O'Grady started off brilliantly with a crack at the World Cup, 3rd in Milan-San Remo. Then it all went wrong for the Cofidis team, and the doping accusation started to materialise. Grady had just joined the team, wasn't part of any of the accusations, but the team suddenly had to stop racing. And as a result of that, he lost all hope of continuing in the World Cup. So he's been concentrating on the big tours. It's a big day for him.
Yeah, it must have been pretty tough for him psychologically, moving across from Crédit Agricole to ride for Cofidis, and then all of a sudden the team completely and utterly embroiled in scandal, of which he had absolutely nothing at all to do with. But he kept his morale, he kept training, and he now seems to be riding a very good end of the season.
Well, let's see if he can pick up a stage win today. This would be delightful for him.
Well, he's sitting in the wrong place here, because there's an attack just going off the front, and there's a group of about 3 riders now starting to open up an advantage over the rest of the group.
He's just going to keep an eye on things here. He's going to see what's happening. He's going to keep an eye on Freire and Zabel, and you can bet your life that Erik will keep an eye on everybody, because a rare chance for big points, which they don't normally get on this stage. They wouldn't have put this down as a point stage for them. They went away, in fact, for the early sprints where the points were, and as a result the breakaway started and they kept going, and this is what it is. There's Freire.
And Erik Zabel also. Stuart O'Grady now has decided this is a good chance for him. He's seen the attack going off the front. Zabel under a bit of pressure on this climb, as is Oscar Freire.
Yeah, this looks as though it's beginning to split up asunder here.
It is putting up.
This is Fuentes.
Well, we expected the climb to come, the attack to come on the climb from one of the climbers in this group.
That's a good move by Fuentes. He comes to form late in the year. He did so last year, and he continues to get himself onto some good results. He started to come through really last year. That was his first big time. He got a couple of wins in the Grand Prix Industria and the Grand Prix Lodio. There's only 2 wins as a pro. He hasn't won anything this year. But, you know, on a big team like Seiko, you don't often get your chance. And for Juan, this is going to be a big chance for him.
The main field are really whacking it up here. It's the Kelme riders on the front here, trying to whip up the pacemaking. I should think for Alejandro Valverde. They're inside of 10 kilometres to go. Look at unbelievable.
That's been a torrential downpour in that area. It's still raining heavily here with Fuentes, but that was torrential there.
Look at the wind blustering at the side of the road, pushing the barriers. Unfortunately, those barriers are fairly well secured. 6 kilometers to go. There's 4 kilometers now separating the front end of the bike race to the main field, who are absolutely scorching along these roads. They've knocked quite a lot off that advantage. I don't think they're going to see the race again, but this looks coming through. This is Stuart O'Grady. Now, O'Grady is an unbelievable bike rider. He's actually ridden across the gap to Fuentes, and he's actually, I think, going to make the junction. Stuart could get himself the victory here.
Well, it would be great if he did it. He's never won a stage of the Tour of Spain, and he's reached now Fuentes. And handy pair of legs to come alongside. These two know each other pretty well because Fuentes used to live in Sydney. Now, Stuart didn't know him when he lived in Sydney. But since then, Fuentes has ridden in the Jacobs Creek Tour down under January timing of the year in Adelaide. And that's where Stuart comes from. And I'm quite sure they've had a good chat because Fuentes, shall I say, Australian accent is totally fluent because he was brought up there for about 15 years.
I tell you what, O'Grady is the most versatile bike rider I think we can talk about, because this year he won himself a World Cup for the first time, went across to Athens, won himself a gold medal in the Madison, and then came across here to ride the Tour of Spain. It really is a very difficult do to swap and change between the different disciplines, but O'Grady is so full of talent. He's been able to do it well this year. Absolutely,
he is the man when it comes to all-round bike riding. Well, the Kelme boys, for some reason, have taken this race by the head and have decided to start riding at the front. Well, I don't think there'll be any complaints there. Just saw Floyd Landis off to the right too.
Yeah, Landis riding at the front end of the main field. Still got a good half a minute advantage over his teammate, Manuel Beltran. He's going to try and stay up there at the top of the overall classification as long as he can.
Well, it shouldn't be a big change today because that breakaway consistency shouldn't alter things too much. There's the breakaway for you. Jimenez, O'Grady, Ferreira, Elias, Fuentes and Zabel, the remnants of the breakaway. They've done well to stay away. They will stay away now because the rain is on their side, I would think. There's another attack going. Is this Fuentes again? It looks like it might be through the mist.
Yep, he's just decided to go again. They were just picked up by the rest of the group, and he thought, well, let me just hit them hard again one more time. So O'Grady back in the group with the rest of the sprinters. There over to the right-hand side, you can see Oscar Freire keeping a very close eye there on Stuart O'Grady. But this might be the move that's going to pay.
Is this Eladio also getting across here now?
It's a good move, the Kelme rider, Eladio Jimenez. He now has taken up the chase. He's got to the back wheel of Fuentes, gone straight by him, and it looks as if that's Oscar Freire. Very difficult to see through these nasty conditions here this afternoon in the Tour of Spain, but I think that was Oscar Freire still taking up the pace behind.
Well, Eladio, is he going to do what he did in the year 2000 and win here? Because that's what happened then. Your name appears to have to be Jimenez if you win here, because Jose Maria Chava Jimenez, he also won here, sadly no longer with us. The rider who has been the king of the mountains and also the points winner of this tour in years gone by. 4 times the king of the mountains. He won the points in 2001. But that is Jose Maria Jimenez, who sadly became very depressed and passed away a couple of years ago. But the last time that this Jimenez came, in 2000, he won the stage. So he's obviously inspired.
I tell you, this is a nasty climb. These guys are all over their machines, just trying to keep themselves going up. I think it's very difficult to see through the mist, but I think that is Oscar Freire in second place. Stuart O'Grady climbing out of the saddle there, trying to keep himself in contact in third. And Erik Zabel, in fact, is just dropping away a little bit.
Oscar Freire continues to amaze me. One day good, one day bad. We're on the good day again today now. And this is a free fall. There's Landis just off to the right of our picture with golden jersey, looking a little bit drab under the conditions. As we come under the banner here, and I'll tell you how far to go when I see myself. Looks about 5 kilometers to go. 5 to go.
5 kilometers still to go to the finish. Eladio Jimenez here is not really opening up the gap on Oscar Freire. I think it is dancing through the haze there. It's very difficult to see in these conditions, but it looks as if it's the orange Rabobank jersey.
Well, the ambition of Eladio Jimenez might have been a little bit premature here. Sorry about the picture breakup. It's all out of our control. It's the atmospherics. We've done very well to keep these pictures with the clouds so low. Makes helicopter flying a bit hazardous. And a counter-attack going from the field now. And it looks as though Isidro Nozal might have got control of the peloton.
Well, it's been a big domination by Liberty Seguros throughout the whole of the stage here. Looking back there, difficult to see through the mist here, but it's still Eladio Jimenez on the front end of the race.
It is Frere, you know.
It is Frere, still in second place, and in fact he's going to do what he can. Frere is one of those unbelievable rare sprinters who has the ability to climb fairly well.
Well, just watch the riders, and that gives you the indication just how hard the slopes are now of this climb. It really is tough, and our camera's not behaving now. They're probably getting water in them as well with torrential rain we've been through. Looks as though it is easing off. And the peloton has regrouped under the guise of the Kelme boys, who've got a plan today, whatever it might be, maybe to launch Valverde late on. They're not going to catch up with the leaders. They are closing quite quickly, but there's no way they'll catch up.
But the main field is certainly having a fairly good sort out there as well, because that group once again has been reduced to around about 30 or 40 riders. Eladio Jimenez, he's opening up the gap slightly now over Oscar Freire.
Painful though, isn't it?
It's very painful indeed. It's very slow, but I think slowly but surely he's starting to get that little bit of extra distance, and once he gets to the flatter part, you actually get an idea of just how big the gap is, and it is, well, it's gone unbelievably.
Yeah. He just came round that bend, he flipped the gears up a little bit, and he's really given it some power, and he's doubled his advantage there. There's Il Parata. Well, at least a flag behind him anyway. Now, we don't want to see any pushing like that, because they can get riders disqualified even if they don't ask for the push. It puts them in jeopardy.
Well, the referees must think this is a gap that is starting to open, because they've allowed one of the neutral service vehicles to come up behind the leader. But just look at the way he is labouring to get up to the top of this climb here. And once he gets to the top, he plunges down into the finishing line. If he goes over the top of this climb here, Phil, with around about a 30-second advantage, I don't think anybody's going to see him again. But, oh, it's so sore.
Well, Jimenez, this will be a great result for Kelme. And even if Valverde will remain at their #1 man for the final, certainly they're in for a stage win if he can continue now. It's not too far once over the top, down to the bottom and over the line. He's won here before. His teammates, though, are getting mixed up with the attack at the back here.
Well, in third place there, that's Isidro Nozal. They are starting to open up a gap there. In fourth place is Roberto Heras, and I can't see, once again, the leader of the US Postal Service, Floyd Landis. This little climb is putting him into a little bit of bother, and I'm actually surprised to see Tyler disappearing on a climb like this, because let's not forget, he was one of the strongest men in the mountains at the Tour de France.
Well, just now, it's been a wonderful tour, whatever happens in the next few minutes, to the US Postal's race leader, because they've led this race since the day one win in the time trial. And nobody's really expected them to win the race. So maybe today we'll see the change. Jorge Ferrio, who had a wonderful day in the breakaway, somehow has found the legs to have another go.
Very good climber, dancing out of the saddle on the pedals, as very often the position adopted by the big climbers, and the Tour of Spain is all about climbing. He's putting the big names into a spot of bother there, because Isidro Nozal is not able to stay on the wheel at all. And in fact, Roberto Heras, I think, is quite happy to have his teammate up there alongside him.
Yes, this rider shot to form yesterday, enjoys the mountains. He's got a great shape for being a good mountain climber. Small man, but light and lithe, and enjoys the road. At least the rain has stopped for the moment, but the roads will stay wet, and our cameras are hopefully going to dry out and not go down on us. But as we head up towards the summit, this is, remember, the chase at the back now. We've still got the leaders ahead. They're not going to be challenged. They're going to fight out the first place.
Well, this man is trying to get himself a place, at least in the top 10 at the end of the stage if he can. There's 7 riders up the road, and a little bit further up the road we rejoin the leader, who is still doing an excellent job here. He's actually opening up around about a 30 or 40-second advantage over the other riders in the group, and it's still Oscar Freire holding on to second place.
And it's a good move now by Eladio Jimenez. I think it took a while. Oh, and what's happened here? Yes, it looks as though, again, Floyd Landis, he really is under pressure. He produced that good time trial, but he's starting to struggle now.
Well, first and second place in the overall classification, because Tricky Beltran is there as well. just gives you an indication how much pressure Liberty Seguros are putting on this bike race. They certainly want to try and move Roberto Heras up in the overall classification. Every time the race goes uphill, they're going to try and take advantage of this and chip away at the overall lead of Landis and Beltran. That's Aitor Gonzalez on the right-hand side, a former winner of the Vuelta a España. A consistent bike rider, but certainly not the man who won the race a couple of years ago.
Well, in fairness, this has been a pretty tough slog up this mountain for sure, as these riders still trying. It looks as though Ferrio is still trying to get clear here. Is that Valverde?
That's Valverde. Now this is why the Kelme riders were all over the front of the main field, and it looks like Roberto Heras is coming up there as well. Isidro Nozal has blown it. And the motorbikes queue up for the shot of the day as Valverde has attacked the defending champion. He needs a bit of time back. This is Heras. Ahead of him is Valverde, who will not give up trying. He was under pressure yesterday, but he's going to have another go today. They're having a job keeping hold of Ferrio. He's going out of sight and he's sticking to his guns, that little man. There's people here as well. It's not quite as easy to recognise with his helmet on this afternoon. The rider's not allowed to take their helmets off on this stage because it's not actually a mountain top finish, because once they go over the top of this final climb of the day, they plunge downhill into the finishing town. Heras has recovered, but I think he'll be rattled just a little bit by the performance there of Alejandro Valverde, who now seems to have recovered from that little bit of an injury he had a couple of days ago.
He is an immense talent, Valverde. He's been knocked around a bit in this race, but it looks as though he's recovering gently. Roberto Heras will be happy if the race continues to the line in this position. Meanwhile, coming up possibly, I think this is towards the summit of the climb here now, Eladio Jimenez. And he's got the advantage that could win in the day, and it'll be a case of deja vu.
Well, he's also got the advantage that behind he's got a teammate who will be able to defend his position there, because Valverde's position in that group, just splintering off the front end of the main field, will give them the tactical advantage. I don't think anybody's going to see this man again now as he goes over the top of this climb, and he will take some phenomenal risks on the descent of this mountain. I only hope that he's able to stay upright.
I think it'll just be a risk to go down the darn thing, because it's so slippery down here. The roads are very, very wet. Only good news is the rain has now stopped. There's the golden jersey, and I'm sorry we couldn't hold a picture for you there of Floyd Landis. He is losing ground. Desperate moments again for Landis. He's not going to go out of that golden jersey without a fight, and he's got his main contenders not too far ahead of him just now. He could still hold on. He will have to take risks, though, going down the mountain if he wants to stay in gold.
Just 3 kilometers to go, and if you look at these riders here, you get an idea just how steep and nasty this climb is. These are some of the top men from the Vuelta a España this year, and they are struggling just to get the bikes going forwards on the slopes of this climb. Valverde's doing a very good job here for a rider who's a fairly large rider. He does get himself over these mountains quite well.
Just a reminder that we haven't, although we haven't seen them because of our camera staying with this move here, still ahead are the remnants of the breakaway. The sprinters are still in front, Ferrer, O'Grady and Zabel and Fuentes and Ruslan Ivanov. We haven't seen them, but they are still in front by some minutes over this group here. And it's going to be a big tussle, what looks like being for second place now from the sprinters. And you know, the man that gets second today could be the next leader on points.
He certainly could. Look at the leader, though, of the bike race at the top left-hand corner there. He's going down this hill like a maniac.
On dry roads,
and the road is completely dry on the other side of the mountain now. That really is a remarkable change.
A kick in the weather there. Only raining on one side today as we now go down towards the finish, and Jimenez won't be caught now. There's the Heras group. And down below us, Jimenez from a different angle.
Going down very well. This is Floyd Landis, bottom left-hand corner, really having a hard time staying in contact with this bike race, and he needs to recover here this afternoon because he doesn't have that much time in the overall classification. Only around about half a minute over his teammate and only 38 seconds over Isidro Nozal.
Poor Floyd is suffering again today. Touch and go this time. It's been touch and go every time, but this time's more crucial than ever. And Isidro Nozal, look at that face. He's done his work again, but it's beginning to tell now his daily output for Heras.
Well, I tell you what, he's still staying in contact there, and if he can just get in contact with that leading group, he's got a very good chance here this afternoon of becoming the new leader of this bike race overall, because he's not too far behind Floyd Landis in the overall classification. He's a courageous man, though, isn't he? just digging as deep as he can into that suitcase of courage to pull himself back into the bike race. Of course, he's not really riding for himself. He's thinking more about catching those three riders there, just to help Roberto Heras that little bit more.
Well, Ozal is looking to me as though he might be. That's Santiago Pérez we've seen there, a Phonak rider.
Oh, it hurts. He just hasn't got it, has he, in those legs? And we return to the front man here, Eladio Jimenez. He's not too far away. Very shortly, he should be seeing the Flamme Rouge, the red kite. And he's not far away from getting himself a very nice stage victory. And
a repeat of his win in the year 2000 here. And all the winners who come to this place are called Jimenez, it seems. Jose Maria won here. Now Eladio looking for win number 2. And keeping it in the family name, at least, even if they're not related. As he comes up towards the finish now, that's a good result for Eladio Jimenez. A tough way to do it, I have to say, from a breakaway that's been out front for much of the day. But in a race like the Tour of Spain, these breakaways do seem to have a better degree of success than perhaps in the Tour de France. And that's a great win for him as he crosses the line. And what's more importantly, I suspect, a brilliant win for Kelme. But look at this, somehow O'Grady stayed away. Our cameras never went with him, but when he moved away earlier, they never brought him back.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know what Stuart O'Grady's done. He's taken advantage of the downhill section of the course here. He's an unbelievably agile bike rider, and this is going to pull him that little bit closer up towards Erik Zabel in the points classification.
They'll give it to him, I think, Paul. That should be, and it depends where Zabel finishes now, but that should be good enough. There's Zabel. No, that's not Zabel. So that it will, in fact, give O'Grady the lead in the points yet again. Oscar Freire comes home, and Ruslan Ivanov just behind him. No sign yet of Erik Zabel. He's out of the points. Well, for the moment.
For the moment, he's still got to get himself to the finish line. This is Fuentes, the early attacker from Team Seiko. He's going to come across the line here for 5th place.
And there's Erik. Is that Erik? No, that's not Erik Zabel.
Still not Zabel. So no. Zabel is going to be 7th from that leading group of 7, as long as he survives in front of the main field.
Wow, did they sort out towards the end of that climb. That breakaway has all come over in single formation today.
Now then, back with the Roberto Heras group. That should be Alejandro Valverde with him, Leonardo Pipoli. Now, Pipoli over the last couple of days must have climbed up a little bit higher in the overall classification, but still he's around about a quarter of an hour behind riders like Roberto Heras. This is Floyd Landis just reaching the top of the Premio de la Montaña. He's having a hard time, and he's actually lost an awful lot of time. Here is Erik Zabel. He'll have to relinquish that points leaders jersey this afternoon to a certain Australian by the name of Stewie O'Grady.
Nothing much in it. That fight is set to go on for a while yet, I think.
That is pretty interesting to see.
Zabel, what will he be, Zabel? He'll be 7th place.
It is pretty interesting to see that the sprinters are actually going out into breakaway situations to battle out the points classification.
That's right. We must remind everybody that it's places which count at the finish and not time for the points competition. It's meant to be a sprinters competition, and today, for the first time, 3 top-class sprinters were in a breakaway on a mountain stage.
Really quite remarkable. This is the next group on the road, and Roberto Heras once again opening up a bit of time, and it looks as if Isidro Nozal didn't quite manage to make the contact with this group as they reach the summit of the climb, so he may well be losing his chance at a crack at the Mayo Amarillo, the golden jersey of leadership in the Vuelta a España. But Floyd Landis, Phil, is going to have to do something very special to keep himself in the overall lead.
1 kilometre to the finish. Always a nice sign, and this is a matter of time. There are small time gains to be had here, and possibly big time gains over Floyd Landis. So we'll see if they can keep it prized open nicely now.
Look at Heras and Valverde, both of them riding really hard on here to make sure they open up as big a gap as they can over everybody else in the race. Valverde's going to move up in the overall classification, and so too is Roberto Heras. He is taking advantage of every big climb that he can in this Vuelta a España, and we're still only halfway through. Well,
I tell you what, they use plenty of barriers, but in this part of Spain there aren't many people to put behind the barriers, as you can see. It's not a highly populated country out in the countryside, and unlike the Tour de France, where it's summer holidays time, this race here Just has to really search for its public, but it's a great race and a very friendly race.
This is Ferio.
He did well to stay away.
Forgotten all about him. He's going to come across the line for 8th place, but look at the time gap. They really didn't pull back very much on that leading group of riders, because he's going to cross the line just around about 4 minutes in arrears.
That'll be an 8th place then for Jorge. That's 2 good days he's had now in this event. Oh, he's glad that's over too. Time for a nice warm shower and some dry clothes. Here's the battle behind. This is about time now.
It's Valverde on the front. Roberto Heras has matched all the moves and stayed there. He'll be quite content with that this afternoon, because the important thing is he's opened up time gaps on everybody else in the event.
Yeah, good result. That Valverde will climb up the overall with that result too at 4:17. There's Nozal, Sastre. Oh, this man just knows how to suffer. He really does. He just does not give up. Those big feet, we noted them last year. I think they're about, in English sizes, about size 12.
They are huge. Here he comes up to the line, and you know, Floyd Landis looks like he may well have lost the lead in the overall classification this afternoon to Valverde.
He's still not come in.
Well, that's Mancebo coming in there.
Is Landis in this group?
Yes, he is. There he is.
Yeah.
So it's all going to be a question of what the time is on the clock.
I think he just hold on. I believe he'll just hold on. But these last 2 days, it's going to be very close. But these last 3 days, you know, he really should have lost the lead, I suspect, and he hasn't. Well, let's have a look at the result first. Jimenez gets it in 4.5 hours ahead of Stuart O'Grady. Very strange result. And there he is in the golden jersey. So he has held on. We'll wait for the confirmation of the gaps. It cannot be much. And I think Floyd Landis, grimacing to smile here, just wants to get off and go and have a shower. Let's have a look at the overall. 8 seconds is the gap. The closest ever winning margin, by the way, was when Eric Caritou won by 6 seconds a few years ago now. But it looks as though Valverde enjoyed his day. He's very much a challenge, clearly recovered from the crash.